Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Sales Uncharted. Now, those who know me know that I get hyper excited when I find very unique, very different people doing some stuff related to sales, but that I really believe my B2B sellers can listen to and listen from, learn from. So I bump into Jacques de Villiers from South Africa, and I lived in South Africa 15 years of my life. I carry a South African passport. I believe that its water is unique. What it contributes is far outweighs its presence in the world politics or the world economics. I've learned a lot. I'm extremely grateful. And Jacques, I'm really hoping to have a great conversation with you. Jacques, I'd like to kick this off as follows. Take a minute and just tell me about yourself and the work that you do. What pain do you solve for Jacques, and why should people listen to you, sir?
That's a great question, Deepak, and thanks for having me on the show. So look, basically I help companies stop being compared and start becoming the obvious choice, because most people fall into the comparison trap. So, I think my stick is that most sales organizations think they have a closing problem, or they have a pipeline problem, or they have a sales activity problem. But usually they have a commercial positioning problem, so they position themselves badly. They enter the deals too late. They sound too similar. If you go to your competitors' websites and have a look at 3 of your competitors' websites, they probably sound like yours. And if they do, that means you're going to be compared and you're not going to be chosen. And they respond instead of shape. And by the time the proposal arrives, the buyer has already decided how they are going to evaluate the category.
Right.
So my whole thing is that if there's no decision, there should be no proposal. So we should work on that. And I work mainly with founder-led businesses, professional services firms, technical companies, and B2B sales teams that are struggling with commoditization. So they basically look the same as everybody else. Margin pressure, long sales cycles, and of course, the worst thing for a sales manager, inconsistent pipelines. So that's what I do. And
wait. There is so much to unpack there, Jacques. That's like a thesis. There's a lot that you said there. Let's just pause for a second. So, if I am a salesperson and I am struggling to make sense of my pipeline, or if I'm a sales leader and I'm struggling to analyze a pipeline, you are an expert at analyzing what's potentially fake, what's real, and helping people navigate that. And I'm assuming also that you also help them with the process and how to structure the process better. Because one of the reasons why I wanted you as a guest on my show, Jacques, was because you actually do talk about certain methods that you use, and we're going to talk about that as we move forward. Now, there's something you said about proposals that I want to double down on it with you. Just double check that. You said that deals are lost before the proposal exists. What has already happened in the buyer's mind at that point is the question that comes to my mind. So explain about exactly when you talk about deals and proposals, and what has already happened in the buyer's mind at that point. Elaborate a bit on that so I understand that context.
Okay, so let me start that most sales teams think that a proposal is a sales tool. So in other words, they do their pitch, they do their close, and then they send out a proposal, and then I'm hoping the proposal is going to convince. My argument is that the proposal is the next step. It's not a sales tool. It is, what are we going to do next? So the decision should already be made. But so here's what before the proposal has gone out, this is what the buyer normally decides. What kind of problem they think they have. What's the criteria they'll use to evaluate solution? What risk matters? What outcomes matter? And what does good look like? So most importantly, they've unconsciously decided whether suppliers are interchangeable. So if they're interviewing 3 suppliers and they all sound similar, then they're going to compare. And Deepak, this is actually the real battle. Because once a buyer believes that a supplier is comparable, the deal moves into procurement logic, and you know how that goes. They then price comparison, feature comparisons, compliance comparisons, spreadsheet comparisons.
Price spreadsheet, line by line. You can't do this. You can do that. Good match, bad match. Yeah.
And at this point, the proposal becomes administration. So most people or most salespeople think that proposals win deals, but most proposals confirm decisions that are emotionally and strategically shaped much earlier. So that's really what I think
So, but
that's what your question
Jacques, I
was.
gotta ask you a question because there's something you said there. So I am listening to you, and you're talking about what's happening in the mind of the buyer, his steps. What are the earliest signals that I, as a seller, can start looking for that tells me that I'm losing control of this decision? This is out of my hand. Something's going wrong. What are those signs that people typically miss that you would tell people, hey, get your antenna on? This is very important.
Okay. Well, first thing I know when I'm losing the plot is when a buyer or a prospect says, "Just send us something," or "We're already
Ah,
speaking to a few
yes.
providers. Can you quote us on the scope?" Um, we already know what we need. We are mainly comparing pricing now, and those are danger signals because immediately if you hear that, you know you're going to be compared. Um, Another major signal for me is when the seller spends most of the meeting answering questions instead of reframing them. Because most salespeople don't take control of the meeting. They ask questions and then they let the buyer dictate the meeting. And I suppose you could say they become reactive to the buyer's process instead of influencing the buyer's thinking. Because we taught in sales, like, ask questions and then we nod our head and we agree and we try and use smoothing language. But my argument also is that if you're a really good salesperson, your job is to challenge existing thinking, because and get them to look at the problem in a different way. Because most of them, in my view, the problem that most people are solving is not the problem. It's normally upstream or downstream, or normally upstream. There's a deeper problem that causes the actual problem that they're feeling.
Jacques,
So, yeah, that's
there is a truth in what you're saying because my own experience in enterprise selling has been that I walk in and I don't know how to say this to you, but when you go to a doctor and the doctor says, "How can I help you?" And you say, "Hey, doc, I have this lower back pain and it hurts when I sit or I do this." And the doc kind of asks you a few diagnosing questions. And you actually realize that the pain is seeming to be in the back, but it's actually his appendix, which is just ruptured. And then you
Mhm.
suddenly realize that, oh my gosh, what just happened here? And I think that's one of the things. In your
Yeah.
philosophy, though,
No, you're
a customer starts off by telling you what he wants, but you are telling me that most likely they actually don't know their exact pain or the source of it. It's our job to not take what they say at face value, but to dig in a bit more. Is that how I would interpret your thought
uh,
process, Jacques?
yeah, you're absolutely right, Deepak. Most salespeople just come in there, they try and solve the existing problem. And like, for example, I do many things, and part of them is sales training. So people want to do sales training, and I'm
Yeah.
going, there's a couple of steps before sales training, because you might be setting up your salespeople for failure. Like, you don't have a proper marketing system where you generate good leads for them. So I can give them the best sales training in the world, but if they can't get to see a prospect because there's no leads. Um, and as you probably know by now, Deepak, the world has changed a lot from 20 years ago. Remember the days when
Yeah.
we could actually phone people and set up an appointment. Um, I still chuckle. We even taught people how to overcome the gatekeeper so that we could get an appointment with the
You're right.
receptionist or the PA
Absolutely. That
to
was like
tell us.
module one, getting past the
Yeah,
gatekeeper,
that was
right?
module
It
one.
was, yeah.
Now I wish for those days, because nowadays people don't answer their mobile, so you can't even have a conversation with somebody. So, and I think, and I'm jumping a bit off topic here, but in the new sales world in future, most salespeople are going to battle to reach people on the phone. I mean, I believe, and I'm not really up to scratch with this Gen Z or millennials, but the
Mhm.
younger people today don't even pick up their phone. So if that's going to be your market in the future, how are you going to actually reach them? So you're going to have to be better at marketing and email marketing to be able to at least get them to phone you, because you're not going to be able to reach them.
Because
So I think
but
salespeople are facing a problem which coming
And
quite
Jacques,
quickly.
let me challenge you on something there. You talk about Gen Z's millennials. I'm telling you, this old man sitting in front of you, I give up with my phone. I actually have my phone. I kid you not. Here it is, my fold phone. I just keep it on the side. I look at it every hour. If
Mm.
someone seriously needs to look for me, I just listen to a voicemail. Because Jacques, I'm tired. I don't know who is calling for what and what. And it's not just, I think we have a bigger problem here. The problem is, I would call it cold call fatigue, right? Two, the
Mm,
technology is not easy. I would rather read a message from someone post facto, or
mm,
leave me a voicemail. And if you are saying something that I like, I'll come back to you. So I absolutely agree with you.
yeah,
The gatekeeper thought
yeah.
process that we used to have, how to go through. But at the same time, Jacques, let me just double down here a bit more with you, right? Now, we were talking about proposals, we were talking about the sales process. In the process, you said something that I wanted to really double in. You spoke about, you can do whatever you want to do, but if you're not falling in line with the, if you don't have a process, you will find yourself conforming to their process. Their process is not going to help you or support you. So for me, I've always said this to people, that if you're going to conform to the buyer's dance, then you're never going to be able to lead that situation. What's your take on this? How do people then navigate this, where a buyer is taking very big control over the process and you kind of go with the flow? How does one take control back then?
Okay. Could I take a step back? So
Yeah, please do.
the challenge is that most, especially young salespeople, especially they're talking to old guys like you and me, they come with a sort of a servant master relationship. So they come with a posture that
Ooh,
is very small, um,
yeah,
and they don't come as a sovereign human being. So it's not sovereign human being to sovereign human being. They think that the buyer is the king, and we need to bow to this person. But what they need to do is start taking up space and actually being a consultant and saying, hey, I add value too. And in fact, for
therefore,
me, the very first meeting of that a salesperson meets with someone, it's not even the discovery process. There's a pre-discovery process. And I normally set up a 15-minute meeting just to see if there's a
just to,
fit,
yeah,
because there might not be a fit. And then we spend 15 minutes, we decide we're going to go ahead or we're not. And if we then go ahead, then we have the next meeting, which is then obviously a proper sales meeting where we do the discovery process. So just on that, people make rule of thumb, heuristic, they make quick decisions. And most people don't buy on logic, they buy on emotion. So
yeah,
if the salesperson looks weak and looks like they can't help sort the solution out and take you over the finish line, because what are clients looking for? They're looking for someone that has a safe pair of hands that will take them over the finish line and solve their problem.
yeah.
That's really what they're looking for at the deepest level. So it's usually not logic. Yeah. So what
So,
what we
Jacques,
trying to do is, sorry,
yeah.
you go for
Now, I
it.
was just curious. You use the word, safe pair of hands to guide them and take them through. Could you tell me what type of actions does one do that allows people to give their trust to you, to allow you? Because look, Agar can have all the hands on the world, but if you do not allow me to touch you and help you, I can't get that. So how do you get this permission? What actions do we need to do?
So yeah. So firstly, as I said, I normally like to have a 15-minute meeting before where I set the scene
I think you call it the
and
pre-discovery discussion, right? I want to make
yeah,
sure that we are a fit for each other. Yeah, I think that was very
yeah,
valuable. Yeah,
yeah, pre-discovery. Also, here's the problem that I see, and I call it sex on the first date. Most of us, what happens is we set up an appointment, and then the appointment happens. So let's say it's an hour appointment,
yeah,
and immediately we start the 7 steps of selling, which you probably know backwards. We build a
yeah,
bit of rapport, we do this, and then most salespeople I see go straight into the pitch, and don't do the discovery process. But here's the problem: the first time the client actually sees you is in the first meeting.
yeah,
Um, I'm using Cialdini's words, and these are not exactly the right word, but persuasion. What I do is, let's say the meeting's in a week's time. I hook up with a person on LinkedIn. I send them case studies. I send them testimonials. So I pre-set up the thing so that by the time they meet with me, they've already 60% decided, wow, Jacques really knows
Jacques
his stuff.
really, yeah,
So somebody that I need to listen to. So I'm almost like a peacock. I sort of put my feathers out and I show off a little bit.
Show up a little
Um,
bit. Got it.
like for example, in my case, on my LinkedIn profile, most people on LinkedIn have 4 recommendations. I have 150 recommendations. So I immediately send them to my recommendations. On my Google business, I've got 50 odd recommendations. And so what I'm doing is I'm building this expertise that this is a man that's been around for 23 years and knows what he's doing. So that
Yeah. And
editors
Jacques, I think that's,
can't really
I think
compete.
so I didn't mean to cut you off, but there is again something you said that I want to really double down on to my listeners. You know, Jacques, what's really interesting is I actually do a lot of career coaching as well, right? And the first thing I go and look at is recommendations. If you want to actually understand the character of a person, then I go and I look at some of the people. So, as an example, I meet someone who is saying to me, "Hey, I've had 8 jobs in the last, let's say, 12 years." Jacques, you got to admit, when someone says that, you got to like step back and wonder, what do you mean? Are you a contractor? That's the
Mm,
logic,
mm,
right? He says,
mm,
no, I was an employee. And you got to ask yourself, 8 jobs in 12 years as an employee? That's interesting. But Jacques, what I then do is I also listen to his story, but then I go and look at his recommendations. And I've come to a very simple conclusion. Those who are not stable or showing stability or contributing to the broader will not
mm,
reflect those recommendations, which is surprising, right? You would think that after 8 companies, surely the man has got tons of people he's met. You have met people, but you have not impressed people. And I think you've got a very
mm,
important point there. If I'm in sales and if I am trying to woo with my peacock dance a customer, I really like that visual argument that you put there, Jacques, for a second, right?
mm,
I recommend to my customers that when you are being sold by someone, go and see if they have recommendations from a past customer on LinkedIn. Ask them for. And I think it's a
mm,
very valuable point, Jack. I mean, you slipped it in so calm and so easily, but I really want to call this out to people. Social proof is critical in this day and age where AI makes everyone sound very shiny and very smart, right, Jack? But the
mm,
reality is that you have to go and touch and do something with a customer that actually gets you that goodness from them that someone's going to willing to give. It's not a matter of spending 5 minutes to write a recommendation. The fact is that someone's putting the pen to paper and giving you a vote of confidence that you are willing to publish to people is very important. And I think
mm,
you I had to stop you there for a second, Jacques, because I think that's a very valuable point. If you as a seller are
and
able to articulate to a new buyer what your prior sellers have felt about you and about your prior buyers have felt about you as a seller, I think it makes a
mm,
lot of sense. And to me, Jacques, I think what I was also subcontext to what you're saying is I think you're emphasizing a lot of things around what I think is trust building, right? How do you build this trust?
yes.
If you're going to sound salesy all the time, then do you really think that person's going to let down his guard with the words they use when you're talking to me, right? And I think this is valuable. These are gems. And here's the fun part. You and I also discussed the fact that, 20 years ago, it was, gatekeepers. But we have also kept up to date. There are some basic principles in sales that never change, Jacques. And that's why I'm enjoying this conversation, because what you're doing is saying, let's demystify this. Let's look at what you
Mm,
typically see and let's look at it, what actually is happening. So let's keep this conversation
yeah.
going. So now let's go back to this. Tell me a bit about this comparison test that you created, Jacques, because I think it was very unique. It's placed very well. I really want the audience to kind of understand what was the thought process when you were trying to figure this out. Why did you come up with what the comparison test? And I'm using this because you used this before earlier,
Mm.
because people don't know. So demystify it, remove the quotes for me and tell me what the comparison test is and why you are proud of it.
Okay, so let me give credit where credit's due. You probably heard of a guy called Daniel Priestley, and he's got this thing called the Score app. So I pay money for this comparison test, but what it does, it works out questions, and then
Yeah.
it can be any test. I use the comparison test,
Mm.
and it's a brilliant way to collect leads. I mean, just on the comparison test, I've had 60 people fill in the comparison test, and then I've sold
Yeah.
them into a seminar. So that's part of my lead
Correct.
generation strategy.
Yeah.
Um, but basically, um, most companies are being compared, not chosen. So because companies confuse difference with differentiation. Being being different is easy. I mean, being commercially non-comparable is rare. So as I said
Mm.
earlier,
That's
if you
you're
go and
right.
have a look at if you go and look at your competitors' websites, especially in the IT space where I play, the MSP, literally, I don't know if they've all used the same web designer or the same copywriter, but it all sounds
It,
the same.
it's,
And
Jacques, you nailed it there, because here's what I'd like to actually call out to people. My ex boss used to tell me, when you're writing a proposal, Deepak, and I go to the executive summary, and if I remove the name of South African breweries and I put there, let's say, Amstel or Heineken or
mm,
something else, if the executive summary reads that it is doable for every other company out there, then we have a problem. You need to make the exec summary resonate to that specific individual. It needs to be unique to that. And you're right, when I go to a lot of these, literally, we are a values driven company. Okay, next bullet, we listen to our customers. Okay, then you sit back and you kind of say, you know what, this could be Betty's pizzeria as well, for all I care. So, and
mm,
I think this is something that people miss. And I would flip this, and I know this is not part of the conversation, but I would actually say to you, when I coach and I work with salespeople, the first place I go to is a LinkedIn profile. And Jacques, what's really sad about this is that you can tell everyone's using Chat GPT to write their about me and their headlines,
mm,
but in the process, they've lost their voice.
no,
Everyone sounds the same. And when everyone sounds the same, how do you differentiate? That's when I look
well,
for. So when I was looking at you and the work you do, for me, the comparison test stood out as something unique to you. And then I actually did it. And I got the results. And I said, you know what? I would like to get Jacques onto this call. But Jacques, let me not break keep going with the
so,
comparison test. Tell me more.
but you're absolutely. I mean, I want to throw up in my mouth sometimes when I see read companies that say, we have better service, we care more, we customize, we innovate,
Exactly.
we've
We
been around
innovate.
for
Yes.
20 years. I mean, we kind of expect you to do that already. We have MBAs working for us. I'm going, well, if you're in that environment, I expect you to have an MBA working for you. I mean, so that's not even
Bravo. Yeah.
it's not a USP, it's not a unique selling point.
It's
So
like,
everyone,
please pay me for breathing. What?
yes, exactly. And it's like, so everyone's saying a variation of the same thing. So if you look at, I mean, in my sales training market where I compete against other sales trainers and sales consultants, I mean, the reason I've managed to differentiate myself is because if you go read my website, jacquesdevilliers.com, you'll see I don't even talk about sales training. Um, I talk
You're
about,
right. You don't. You don't. You're right.
I talk about because I figured out who and the important thing is to figure out who your ideal customer is. So Deepak, I thought my ideal customer was a sales manager because they need training, etc.
Correct.
In
They have
two
the budget.
years,
Yeah.
yeah, in 2 years, I've managed to get 1,500 email addresses and of sales managers and put them on my database. I've been nurturing this database. Do you know that in 2 years? Not one of them have put one person on one of my sales courses. I'm going, I was always going to swear. What the actual, you know what I want to say?
Yeah.
Like, do you not want to put anybody on this? I mean, do you not need sales training? And then it finally dawned on me, I'm selling to the wrong person because a sales manager is not an economic buyer. And how do we know he's not an economic buyer? Because when a sales manager needs to send someone on a course or something, he has to ask someone above him for permission to get budget. So that's how I know that they're not my market. And since I've changed it to say, hey, focus on the CEO, focus on the
The
financial
guy that
director,
signs
because
the.
yeah, the financial director is the one that looks at the numbers. And that's why I talk a lot about is your pipeline real? Because a lot of salespeople, what they pad the pipeline and they put, I say, crap in the app. They put deals that shouldn't be in it, and they can for one quarter they can con the sales manager. In fact, their target is not the customer. Their target is to impress the sales manager. Say, look, I'm doing my KPIs. I've got all these things in. So we've said it. We've actually set it up badly because we force salespeople to almost cheat because they are expected to make so many calls, set up so many appointments, put in so many proposals. But when you measure it on proposals and not quality of proposals, then of course
Yeah.
you're going to put
You,
anybody into
ma,
the pipeline.
Jacques, I was laughing there when you spoke about crap in the app, as you put it, right? And one of my ex bosses, a South African guy, he used to use this Yay, excellent pipeline, Deepak. But why do I get the feeling you're pumping sunshine? And I'm like,
Mm.
pumping sunshine. What is he talking about? Then I got it. And let's forget these words or the fact that we're doing a peacock dance and all that, right? But the reality is that cutting to the chase, let's talk about this. What do you think a sales leader should be doing, Jacques, then, to interrogate a pipeline to make sure that it ain't sunshine, it's actually real stuff, or that it's not crap, it's actually solid gold? How do you think a
Okay.
sales leader should be leading that conversation going forward in this new age?
So I'm going to be controversial here. Most sales managers abdicate their responsibility. So they we have a CRM. We put the thing into the CRM,
Yeah,
but they don't coach their salespeople properly. I mean, I've run 12 sales teams. With every sales team, every salesperson I coach for 3 hours a week. So just in the old days, I'm not sure if it works like that. The ideal number for a sales manager is five salespeople. So it's almost like a military. Well, in the military, a lance corporal would have
the
10.
span of control is known. There's a
Yeah,
limited limit. Yeah,
yeah. So in the old days, you'll remember this, Deepak. A sales manager, if you have 5 people, that means 5 days. 1 day spent with each sales rep driving along with them and coaching them and watching the game. Then there should be a whole bunch of coaching happening for each person, and then obviously you got to do your admin and your sales meetings. So so the guys aren't watching the game because so they're letting the salesperson kind of run wild, and then it's too late the next quarter when they're trying to figure out, well, nothing's actually happening. So I always look at the pipeline and I sit with the salesperson and I look and I say, what's the next move? And as you probably know, most CRM systems have what we call rotting. And so you should know that if I've sent a proposal, the next move is I need to, for example, phone them in 3 days' time to
follow up
see
something is yeah.
what the next step is. And then what, so it's always what the next move. And the challenge is that most salespeople don't use the CRM properly. So when they put dates of what they have to do, suddenly there's a lot of red, and I can see they're overwhelmed because they're not getting to what the next move is. So I always
Yeah.
ask, what's the next move? Is this real? And what? And I interrogate and ask them, what makes you think this deal is real? And that's how. I mean, it's almost like I can't explain it. It's almost a natural thing I do, but like you, Deepak, I can see a donkey from a racehorse within, I don't know, 20 seconds. So I can see a false part.
Let's talk about this because I think it's very valuable, right? There are people listening into this call, and they've come on this call because Jacques has been brought by Deepak and Jacques. But now Jacques says, I can't tell you exactly, but Jacques also knows that I know a donkey when I see a donkey. Let's talk about that, Jacques. Jacques, what is that intuition that you think a sales manager should lean into when he sees a pipeline? There's something in the pipeline that tells him that this doesn't look good. So forget the very complex theatrics or the fact that there's a field and that to move from this gate to this gate, you have to pass 5 toll gates and stuff. We know all that. But there has to be some. And I like what you said because I know exactly what you mean. Sitting in rooms, when people are talking, you suddenly lean forward because what you just heard does not resonate with your experience. You just heard what's the
So,
next move, and you get some biblical references to something, and you're like sitting there like, okay, boss, can we get what do you use that tells you to your intuition? How should a sales manager listening in on this call right now use his intuition at least to know something is off here?
okay. So this is going to be very controversial, and it speaks to my cynicism. Just assume that more than half your sales team is going to be lying to you. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Because I've run 12 sales teams. People lie to my face. I'll give you an example. Can I give you an example? I
Yeah,
took
yeah,
on a
please.
company, and this guy is getting paid, and in South African money, there's a lot of money. He's getting paid 80,000 Rand a month basic. It's in an IT company, so they have to pay them a solid basic because the sales cycles are long.
Yeah.
And he was making about, I don't know, 20,000 Rand commission. So now they don't have a CRM system. So I asked the guy, I say to him, so what's your close ratio? So he says to me, 50%. Sorry, and sorry if I sound blasphemous. I say, wow, even Jesus can't close 50%, but okay, let's go with that. So I then say, okay, and how many people do you see a month? He says 10. So I said, so you close 5 deals a month, basically, at 50%. So he said, yes. So then I'm already looking at this guy and I'm going, no, this is something. So I phoned the accounts department. I said, can you give me the invoices that you billed for this guy for the last 6 months? Deepak, you won't believe it. 3 deals, 2 of them to existing clients and 1 new deal. So, and I get this often because sometimes I think salespeople live in a la-la land where they don't know what's real. They don't even know they're lying. They think that it's the truth because there's a lot of activity happening, a lot of busy work happening, but there's nothing actually happening. I think so they sell themselves a story, or some of them are malicious and are genuinely lying because they know they can con me for a good couple of months before I click.
Here's how I would respond to that, Jacques, right? I would still say the example you quoted, I would call that more of an exception than the standard. But here's the fun part with exceptions. When they happen, this make you real. It's like someone sitting with you and arguing, the sun does not rise from the east. And you're sitting looking at him like confused. And you have to look confused because you actually cannot understand why would people say something like that, right? So you actually feel like you need to go test something. So you go back and actually open up an encyclopedia, or you go online and you look and ask, does the sun rise from the east and why does it and how does it? 2 days later, so that's what you did. You heard something, you know it sounds wrong, it doesn't sound scientific, and like you said, blasphemous, yes. You went and did some research. Now the question is, coming back to it, how do we call people like that out then? Do we call people out like that, or do we just come on calls like this and cry about it? I don't know, Jacques, what the right way, because I would call that guy out. Would you call someone out like that and say, I didn't understand your use of this 50%, but when I checked, I don't see 50%. Can we reconcile that? Is that the right step with people like that?
Absolutely. So let's get into another subject. Sales leaders, in fact, all leaders, their biggest problem that they have is that they don't know how to hold people accountable. Because here's the thing.
Oh, yes.
Here's the thing. We have a standard. Let's say whatever the standard is. In sales, we have a certain number that we have to hit. Factory, we have to create a certain amount of widgets, whatever the standard is. And you've got 4 kinds of salespeople, let's call them employees. On the right side of the standard, you've got the ones that just pitch up for a paycheck. They kind of do their job well, they're not doing anything great fireworks, but they're doing the job well, things are working. So those you can deal with. Then you get your heroes, the people that do the extra mile and really go to bat for the company. They probably come for something bigger than a paycheck. They come for some kind of purpose. So those are the kind of ideal employees that you wish you could have. So on that side, that's pretty easy. But if you look at the left side, you have what we call, there's 2 kinds of employees. You have a malevolent, someone who doesn't play well with other kids. So normally, and maybe in your world you'll have experienced this, your top salesperson is normally a problem because they don't fill in the CRM, they don't come to meetings, and they kind of hold the company to hostage because, hey, I'm bringing in 80% of the business. What are you going to do about it? That's a problem. So there's a couple of ways to deal with that, and I'm not going to unpack that here. But the bigger problem is an employee that we call careless. They make a mistake. So there's 2 kinds of mistakes. If you haven't trained them, then you can't blame them. So if they make a mistake, that's on management.
That's an interesting point. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first challenge. And and by the way, I'm just going to put this out there. Most sales companies I know don't train their salespeople properly. They give them a bit of product training. Maybe they send them on a sales course for a day, if you're lucky, and then they give them a pad and they give them a golf T-shirt and say go. And then the guy fails in 3 months, and then they go, what's the problem with this child? And this person, and the problem with this person is not the problem with the person, is that you didn't build this person. So once again, it's on the leadership, because they don't train properly. But that aside, the biggest problem is the one that has been trained, that knows how to do the job. Because now it's not a skills problem, it's an attitude problem.
It's an attitude problem. Yeah.
And when it's an attitude problem, the only recourse is censure. In other words, first warning, go through the process. Because if you don't censure this person, you start accepting mediocrity. And this is what happens in most companies. They accept mediocrity and they start letting the standards slip. And before we know it, we're getting D averages as
everyone is. Yeah, exactly. I would agree with that to some degree. Yeah.
So I don't let salespeople get away with anything. They need to produce and listen. I sound almost AI and inhuman. I'm not, because I fall. I mean, the challenge for sales managers or sales leaders is that we like these people. I mean, they're likable because salespeople are likable. They're good at.
In general, yes, I would agree with you. Yeah.
And so that's their personality. And we also know them. We spend time with their families. We go to braais or barbecues in your world. Now it's very hard to have that courageous conversation and say, listen, there's a boss relationship here as well. And the whole familiarity breeds contempt.
Yes, I do.
So if you look at it from a military viewpoint, I was in the military. I was a lance corporal, which is like the worst thing to be, because you've got no real power. You're herding cats, like trying to control your guys who are mates with you, but also you fight together and you mates together. But when you have to do the real thing, they don't want to listen to you. So now the sergeant or the lieutenant has to walk in, which in our case would be the sales director, and throw their toys out the cot, and then suddenly everyone does everything. So this is the challenge that sales managers, in particular, face, is that the lines become a bit blurred as to where's the friendship, where's the fun, where's the actual accountability. And that's why I said our biggest challenge is we don't know how to hold people accountable. And when we don't do that properly, we're setting ourselves up for mediocrity. And here's the reality. If you've got 10 salespeople in your team, 2 of them, this, Deepak, 2 of them are doing 80% of the business. And if you look at the science of they call it a fractal, out of the 2, 1 of them is doing 80% of the business. Then you've got the fat middle, let's call them the infantry, where they kind of, the Charlie group, they call themselves many names, but the Charlie group said it beautifully. They said they interviewed, I can't remember if it was 21,000 sales teams or 27,000, doesn't matter. And they said 80% of your sales team is only hitting 42% of its target. And for us as sales managers, that is acceptable, but it's not actually acceptable, but that's what we accept. So that fat middle is hitting 42% of its target.
And Jacques, let me tell you where I spend a lot of my time, right? I've always said to people 2 things. One is, if you have, let's say we have a team of 10, which is the number, I think makes it easy for the maths, right?
Yes,
2 of the boys are doing 80% number. That statistic, believe it or not, has consistently held up. Got it. Now came the next point, which is, are those 2 lone wolves? Do they disregard policies? Are they out of line? Then you need to have a conversation with them and you potentially censure them, as you called it, right? I get that. Let's park those 2. Let's give them the benefit of doubt for now that they don't need censure. They may not be following the policy, but they're not breaking it also. So, but they do something unique. Now the question is coming down to the other side. In the same way that you got the fat middle, as you call it, there has to be an underachiever bottom. There has to be 1 or 2 people that are just absolutely out of sync. You've tried your best. You don't know what's going on with them. I've always told managers and leaders, right? Don't spend excessive time on the bottom. Don't spend excessive time on the top. Do try to spend a lot of time on the fat middle, as you call it, because getting that guy from an average of 42 to 60, 70, 75 is actually going to deliver to you more mathematically better results than going, Hammering a guy that's already at 140 to make him do 160 doesn't achieve much. It'll only drive him nuts, and he's going to leave you as well if you're going to do that.
mm, mm,
And two, people that are operating on autopilot don't like to have people intervening. You think you're helping them, but I've been told, and I've done my research on this. I've spoken to 200 rockstar sales reps over the course of 2025, and this is what they told me, Jacques. When I'm making my number, please stay away from me.
mm,
He says, when you come along for ride alongs, when you tell me I want to come onto a call, when you tell me that I'd like to show a senior face to your customer, only show your senior face if I'm on fire and I don't know what's going on.
mm.
Otherwise,
You-
I'm okay. Dropping an email, talking to them is fine, but don't get too engaged. To me, that was like counterintuitive here. I thought, but then I also realized this goes back to the way sales managers are taught and learned, right? Ride alongs are awesome. And what we are now saying is that, yes, if done the right way and for the right reason.
yeah.
So
You're,
question to you is as follows. Do you buy the logic that spending time on the 50% actually delivers better dividends? Yes, no. How would you counter that? Jacques, what would you say?
ab- absolutely. So let's just talk about your rock star salespeople.
Yeah.
You first have to assess if they really are rock stars. So some of them have just been there a long time, so they've inherited a lot of accounts. So they're obviously going to have most of the business.
You got the momentum. Yeah.
But are they creating? Are they being key account managers and creating more share of wallet? You got to check
Good
that.
point.
Are they creating new leads or new business? Because some of them are just riding the wave, but they're not really that good. But because they've been there for 20 years, they've got all the top accounts. So first you have to ascertain if they really are rock stars. So that's the first part. Or did they just inherit beautiful accounts and they got lucky? That's the first one. Absolutely, I agree with you. Don't get it. So how I manage a superstar, I either I almost treat them like a military thing. I treat them like Rambo. I actually take them out of the team.
Bravo.
They're not part. They go in the field and they kill things, and they're special forces. You don't bring them into the infantry, which is your basic average fat middle.
Yeah, I'm with you. You're slowing them. Yeah.
Yeah. So
It-
they get special treatment. And if the fat middle says, oh, why is he getting special treatment? I say, listen, when you get to that level, you'll also get special treatment. But right now you're not there. So if you want to do that, then become like this guy. Not everyone gets to join special forces, Delta Force or your recce's or whatever. It's only a special breed that does it. The rest of the people are what I'd call infantry. They get into battles, but they're hoping they don't have to fight too hard because just now they get killed.
Yeah, exactly.
So they'll do the bare. Most of them will do the bare minimum. Unfortunately, once again, that's my cynicism coming out. But after running 12 sales teams, one does become quite jaded because you hear every story in the book, and as I said, you can see a racehorse from a donkey quite quickly. So absolutely, and by the way, when this sounds so cynical. When I move into a company, if there's 10 salespeople, I know there's going to be the top 2, there's going to be the fat middle, and then there's 2 that I have to fire, unfortunately. And because I know it's going to happen, but I do give them every opportunity to try and get it right. But 2 guys are going. I can tell you that right now. And here's the thing about being fired. I don't know if you've ever been fired. It sounds like you're very clever. You don't get fired. I've been fired once, and that was 23 years ago. That was 23 years ago, and I started my own business, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because the biggest favor you can do for somebody is to get them out of a company where they're not passionate about it. It's not their thing. Rather, give them an opportunity to find a home where they can fully express their sovereignty and express themselves. By keeping them on, you're actually not doing them a favor. But that's a whole philosophical discussion, because
it's
obviously.
But here's the fun part, Jacques, because I think we've gone into very different territory, but I think it's very valuable territory because we have B2B sellers listening in, right? And I think this is at the end of the experience speaking. And here's the reality: there are people on this call listening who are part of that 1 or 2, and they might be sitting there thinking, "But did these gentlemen just write us off?" And I think what you said is, "I'm not writing you off. In the role, you are failing, but as an individual, I'm actually saying there's maybe an opportunity here to look at the shiny thing that may happen from this, that silver lining." I have been in my life lost job twice, right, Jack? Once was because the customer complained severely about the entire relationship they had. So
Mm-hmm.
all the people on that account, including the account director, just poof, gone overnight. And that taught me a valuable lesson that one, when customers are complaining and when the team is not working to solve those as fast as possible, it's not an individual that's going to be told, well, you seem to have done okay, therefore we will keep you, but the rest of you guys were no, no, no. Everyone's reputation goes down. And then
Mm.
that was a big learning for me, because I thought I had worked my backside off for these guys. I thought I was on first name basis, but that's not how it works. A customer has decided that they don't want to work with your org any further, right? At that point, the customer is not sitting there deciding which one of the six guys that they don't also care whether the people are going to lose their jobs from that or not. So I've always
Mm-mm.
said to people, when you're building relationships with customers, build it in a pragmatic way. And when you see failure on the part of other people in the team, call it out. Because when there is failure by another person, that failure could potentially set your house on fire. You don't know it yet. And Jacques, I
Absolutely.
think that's the when you said the point about, look, maybe you're not cut out for this, but I'm also seeing a different parallel here. For me, coming back to your question at hand, right? The best thing that happened to you of getting fired, the best thing that happened to me when I got fired was that, Jacques, I came back with a very clear understanding.
Mm.
If you want loyalty, get a dog. Number
Mm.
one. Number two, it's just a job, Deepak. Focus on the job, make them happy, make yourself happy, but don't fall in love with the company at least. And I know it sounds heretic to say this on a call like this, right,
Mm.
Jacques? But we're now living in truly odd times. The same AI that we are told is going to uplift humanity is also being used to right now destroy humanity, right? Look at the jobs. Every morning, I'm sure you're opening up a new headline. Facebook 8,000 minus, Oracle 30 minus. What's going on here, right?
Mhm.
And I think this is the reality in the world we live in. So, to the
Mm.
bottom two guys, my message is feel motivated enough to emulate at least what's happening at the top end. There
Mm.
has to be something you can learn from. To the middle 50%, I think they have a better opportunity to do something better. But Jacques, we are out of time, sir. What I want to do is quickly wrap up. If people are looking for you, Jacques, where do they find you, sir?
That's very easy. I'm well SEO. Just look for Jacques de Villiers, but it's jacquesdevilliers.com. Just look for
I was
jacquesdevilliers.com and you
I
can.
was smiling when I saw that, because I think you were very smart when you picked up that domain, because I think you're the fourth Jacques de Villiers that I've met in my life. But for you to have snatched that domain, I'm very excited for you. That's well done. I also snagged Bhutra.com, Jacques. So I know that feeling, that being
Yeah.
able to snag something that potentially could have gone. So is it Jacques at jacquesdevilliers.com?
No, well, Jacques at jacquesdevilliers.com is my email address, but if you look for my website, it's jacquesdevilliers.com. I mean, just type in
.com. Got it.
jacquesdevilliers.com.
And your LinkedIn is just look for Jacques de Villiers. We'll
Just
find you
look for
there as well.
Jacques de Villiers. I'll probably come up on the front there.
Perfect. Perfect. Jacques,
Represented.
thank you very much for joining us then. I'm going to bid adieu, sir. Thanks. Hey, listeners, I hope you had fun. Uh, Replay this. This is a seasoned man speaking. He speaks his heart. He spoke with some guts as well. And I think a lot of people may look at this and miss the subcontext. Connect the dots. I think there's a very powerful message here. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, Deepak.